Now, after you install your Windows additions and you have this, you would have to manually maximize. Can you see the screen? I muted you. You need to unmute to tell me you are saying. So you have to manually maximize
Yes, we can
that,
see the screen.
and then also manually maximize this before it can cover the screen. Did you try that? The person who asked the question, that's what you should do. Since you loaded it successfully. If it didn't load, then it would be a difference. But since it's loaded, you'd have a button.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. It has worked.
Okay.
It has worked.
All right, that's fine. All right, so yes. More question before we move on. We just want to make sure that the little you have learned so far is in place so that you can learn more today.
Sir, please, can you come again on how to do the Windows addition?
Okay, so the Windows addition is this. After you have loaded that and it's showing like this, it will not cover the whole screen. The first thing to do is go to devices and click insert guest additions CD image. You must click this first. You see this?
Yes.
Okay. So once you click that, so you have, it's like in the physical now you have inserted the CD. So you now go to your file explorer right there, and then you go to your CD drive. Where is it? Okay, you have to go to my PC to access CD. And then you open your CD, which you already inserted by the first click. You open the CD, and then you find so many additions, so many drivers. You take the one that runs on Windows. This is it. This one runs on Linux. This one runs on Solaris. This one runs on AMD board, a different version of Windows, but this one works. So take the VBox Windows Addition and double click it. That's it. So that's how to run it. I don't need to double click now because I already have it.
Yes, it's clear, sir.
All right then. Are you sure you want to? All right, no more questions. All right, so today we are going to configure our server. We've already installed the server. Now we are configuring the server. All right. So let me minimize this so I can focus. All right, so this is the server. Now, with this server, the first thing we want to do is create a network, because that's where we're going. We want to create a network. And then we're going to install another system, and that system would be the client. I need to do some explanation here. Let me know. I don't know if you see my screen, but just playing around with it. All right. So what we want to do with the server now is create a network. So we have a server, a Windows server operating system. We're going to create another system that will be client. So when we say client, we're basically saying that you are on a MTN network, for example. Your handset, technically called MS, is a client on MTN server. Okay. So how do you configure your handset to recognize MTN server, connect with MTN server, and be able to receive and upload call? Or more restrictively, within your enterprise network, the server room has a server. What about the ND on the top floor? How does it connect to the US head office? Through the server and then on the network. That's what we're trying to do now. So we have a server. So whatever we do on the server, we will not know if it works or not if there is no client to connect to it and test if it works. And then we can now practice on that client server network. So whatever you do on one client to make it possible for that client to recognize and work with the server, that same thing you'll repeat on every other client, and then you can expand your network from just two system network to as many as you ever want it to, as large as you ever want it to be. So to do that, we configure, before we even introduce the client at all, we prepare the server. We configure the server to become the domain controller. In other words, we first of all create a domain. Somebody asked yesterday what's a domain, and I said domain is the Windows name for network. So we create a domain. In other words, we create a network, but in Windows we call it domain, and then we make the server the domain controller of that domain. So when there is a domain, there's a network, and there's a domain controller for the network, then other systems, other computers, other devices can start joining that using the domain. And every computer, every device that joins that client. So we have a client, we have clients, and then we have server. So that kind of network where there is server, not just a server this time, but actually a domain controller. And then you have client being authenticated, being allowed access to the network by the domain controller. That kind of network is called client server. So we're going to create a client server network now. Like I said, the first thing to do in creating a client server network is to make our server the domain controller, and that also automatically takes care of. Now, how do we make our server? We make our server a domain controller by installing three services, actually one major service on the server. That is like wearing the server a crown that makes the server the king of that domain. That service that we install on the server to make it the domain controller is called Active Directory Services, ADDS. So what we're going to do now is to install and configure on the server Active Directory Service. And then we'll now have the opportunity, the chance to promote the server from being a server to becoming a domain controller. However, when we are installing and configuring the Active Directory Services, simply called ADS or ADDS, ADS is the old name, ADDS is the new name. The ADS is going to look around and say, I can't do this work alone. I need my lieutenants. I'm the general. I need my lieutenant to come with me so that we'll go and do this work. And there are two men that it cannot do without. We always carry them wherever it goes. These two men are other services called DNS service and DHCP service. So even though you are calling ADDS to come and take over, ADDS will come along with two men, with his crew.
Sir, please come again. Hello.
What's that?
Please come again.
I can't hear you. You are. Please don't distract this.
You said you need Active Directory service. You said you need an active.
Just listen. I'm still explaining. There's nothing to come again. Whatever I'm saying, I'm repeating them 5 times, 6 times, so that it seems. I've not even started practical. So let's go ahead. You are breaking the flow. Now, unless you don't hear me at all, do you hear me? Please unmute. Somebody should unmute.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So as long as you are hearing me, if you miss a word, I would always
We can hear you. We can hear you.
So we are installing Active Directory Services, but Active Directory Services will always pull along two other services, the DNS service and the DHCP service. So if I ask you now, what do we need to configure on a server in order to make that server the domain controller? If you say Active Directory Services, you are correct. But if you go ahead to say ADDS, DNS, and DHCP, you are also correct. In fact, more correct. Because even if you are not mentioning the other two, the first one you mentioned would always drag the other two along, so that ultimately you are installing these three services. All right? Let me find out if you understand what I'm saying. Now we have a server. What makes a system a server is the loading and configuration of a server operating system. In our case, we have server 2016. So because we have loaded server 2016 on that machine is our server, right? Okay, so what makes a server a domain controller? That's my question. Anyone can answer. I need to make my server, I need to convert my server, I need to upgrade, use whatever word you want at this stage, to a domain controller. What do I need to do?
First of all, you have to install the Active Directory service.
Correct.
And then the DNS and DHCP.
Correct.
Because they have to add.
Correct. All right. So for somebody who has not heard these words, these terms before, like Anthony.
Yes, sir.
Don't bother. Don't worry. Forget your noises. Niyi, Shinyon Badi. Who else is here? Chinedu Okoro. Onyekachi Chima.
Hello, sir.
Onyekachi Chima, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir. Can you hear me,
Okay,
sir?
so what do I need to do on the server to make that server a domain controller?
You need to install an Active Directory service.
Okay.
Install an Active Directory.
Okay. Basically, that's it. That's fine. What's a domain? Anybody can answer now. What's a domain? I mean, we're talking about domain controller. What's a domain that it will be controlling? What's a domain?
Domain, like you said yesterday. Hello, sir.
Mm-hmm.